What are the issues and trends that you see in cyber territory? What are the things that the people you talk to on committee tell you about?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that question. Here at the conference, it's been very, very interesting because it's a combination of the state actor threats that we've been hearing about, whether from North Korea, Russia, China, pick the ones that you like, and how to protect in part critical infrastructure. Another part is how to deal with it in our own lives, because when we're talking to employees about what they can do about cybersecurity, we have to remember that our employees are also citizens and doing things in their own homes as well. So it's a diametrically complementary rather than diametrically opposed view of cybersecurity. And once again, as it's been in the past few years, it's looking at layers of security rather than looking at having a hardened wall, realizing that there are always different kinds of threats and you have to be able to respond to them on different levels.
When you mention state actors, that is among the most terrifying for each of us. How does that compare to individuals whose databases are subject to being held up to ransom? Are the same type of threat, or is there scaling that you must observe?
Well, there is definitely scaling that you have to look at. The ransomware comes usually from a different type of hackers. The different hackers are, the sole people who are doing it for the sport, some who are doing it competitively where they see it as a challenge, some are doing it from a criminal enterprise, some are doing it for intellectual property, and some of them are doing it as a security attack on critical infrastructure in the case of a war, such as going after electrical grid or infrastructure like that. So it's one of those things where you look at a lot of different threats that will affect you depending on your point of view, whether it's head of a government, whether it's head of an industry, whether even if it is a small business or what you're doing as a consumer.
Are we seeing different types of threats now, or is our awareness of cybersecurity growing?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Certainly, we are becoming more aware of both privacy and of security as we constantly read the drumbeat of breaches that are happening, the constant retailers, but also the breaches that we've had at credit reporting agencies as well, where the attacks seem to be going for nodes of information rather than just endpoints of information. So the public has become much more attuned to the consequences of breaches. At the same time, technology never stops. You don't hear about, the criminal enterprises who are having their IT budgets cut, for example, or being resistant of dealing with legacy systems. So the march of technology continues on both sides. It's very much an arms race.
Is this rebuilding you describe a corporate ride? Are companies behind this rebuilding, or do they regard it as a pain and sometimes turn off their listening process?
You can never be as prepared as you would like to be, and some see it as a sunk cost, but then if it happens to them or if it happens to a friend of theirs, it becomes much more personal, obviously. And so it's very difficult to continually say, we have to do this just in case, we have to do this just in case, but you have to do this just in case.
Technical question. I believe when we go encryption and worry about our keying systems, we're coming up with longer strings that our machinery has to process before they say, this is a trusted friend. Are you involved with the construction of those long strings? Do you see an additional threat that we might have if, say, a password was hacked?
Well, no, I'm not involved in the technical end. The National Cybersecurity Alliance is geared towards educating people, and both in personal and business standpoints. We also are a convener of people who do those kinds of things. We try to spread the word from the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, cybersecurity postures and ways that people can help make themselves safer. One of those points that you raise is the shift away from difficult passwords where people were substituting numbers for vowels, for example, and going for longer passphrases, which are more difficult to hack, but at the same time are easier to remember. So they actually become more consumer friendly and easier to use. But of course, it's much easier to use a password manager, and we may be seeing on the consumer side more trends in that direction in the future.